the ricochet effect. Ricochet effect, like ricochet effect. Yeah. We having conversation with no moderation. Love to the communities, the ricochet effect. Having conversation with no moderation. Love to the communities, the ricochet effect. Having conversation with no moderation.
Hi, this is Renee Cobb, and
I'm Dr. Abini El Amin, and we are with the Ricochet Effect.
The WUKY 2024 Women of Distinction kicks off in the month of March for Women's History Month. We have 13 nominees, 4 committee members from staff and the WUKY CAB, and WUKY Newsroom Engagement. All women will be recognized on WUKY news programming. However, 4 women are selected to be highlighted in each week of March, and at a culminating program to be held at WUKY Studios on March 28, 2024 at 6 p.m. Jennifer Reynolds loves meeting new people and working with diverse populations. She was elected to the 11th District's Urban County Council in November 2018. She was the outreach director with Bluegrass Youth Ballet after starting a bilingual outreach program in the 11th District's Valley Park in 2013. Jennifer is also fluent in Spanish and a qualified medical interpreter. Jennifer grew up in Central Kentucky and has traveled extensively. She lived in Central Mexico for 4 years, where she enjoyed using her background in anthropology to do community outreach. She cultivated relationships to work with children, taught educational classes in Spanish, held small groups in her home, and owned a CrossFit gym. Jennifer is a working mom and juggles multiple undertakings. Being active in her community, Jennifer loves attending local events, shopping, and eating at neighborhood businesses. Jennifer enjoys focusing her efforts on serving the city as council member for the 11th District. So we are here at WUKY getting ready to celebrate a wonderful week on March 28th with the Women of Distinction. And today, Dr. El Amin and I are so pleased to have Council Member Jennifer Reynolds into the studio today to talk about her nomination for Women of Distinction. And Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started on talking about your journey.
First of all, thank you both so much for having me here. It's a true honor. I feel inspired by the work that you all are doing and encouraging other women. So thank you. I grew up here in Central Kentucky, moved around a lot before age 6, and then landed in Jessamine County. I lived in a town with a university and a seminary, and my father was a psychology professor. And my mom, after teaching public school, decided to stay home with my brother and myself and homeschool us. So kind of unique in that I was actually homeschooled kindergarten through 12th grade. And the good thing about that is that it gave me time to pursue something that I loved, which was ballet. I saw a ballet dancer on TV when I was 4 years old, and I said, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And so I spent a lot of time taking ballet classes coming in and out of Lexington, mostly for those classes. And also spent a lot of time in my neighborhood. We had so many children in my neighborhood, and a lot of them would come in to town from other countries to study. And so I was exposed to a lot of different cultures at a young age and kind of fell in love with other cultures. I became a professional ballet dancer after high school for attending college. I remember that was a very hard decision to go through all of that. And then ended up going to school, decided that ballet was too vain and too cutthroat for me, and that I really just wanted to help people. And so I decided to, in college, pursue doing work overseas and doing community outreach work, and studied anthropology and Spanish and cross-cultural communication with an emphasis in Latin American culture and religion. And then after that, I was on a mission to live in another country. I had traveled some and ended up in central Mexico. I lived there for 4 years, did community outreach work, taught ballet classes in an orphanage, and then ended up starting a CrossFit gym, which was the first CrossFit gym in the city I lived in. So I lived in a huge city. When people picture Mexico, they often picture, countryside. But I lived in a huge city called León in the state of Guanajuato of over 3 million people. And so myself and my ex-husband started a CrossFit gym there that was successful from the day that it opened, which doesn't always happen. And so that was exciting. But a little while later, we decided that we wanted to come back to the States and be closer to our family and our friends. So then came back here, and I started a ballet outreach program in Valley Park through Bluegrass Youth Ballet. Really good friends with the director of Bluegrass Youth Ballet. And we were just dreaming of what I could do when I came back, and putting together my background in outreach work with my love for ballet plus Spanish. I started this bilingual ballet outreach program in Spanish and English. That was really a joy to be able to do all of those things that I love. I ran that program for 6 years with about 40 kids every year, a lot of times after school, trying to provide them something positive to do. While I was running that program, former council member and other people in the community approached me about running for council, which I thought was crazy at the time because I had never in a million years thought about getting involved in politics or becoming an elected official. I was, getting ready to turn 35. I just thought it wasn't for me. But a lot of people convinced me that really on a local level you can make a difference because somehow I thought that, politicians don't really make a difference. And I saw how the former council member in my district really was making a difference, and that maybe it was possible to make change in local politics. So I remember listening to a podcast. I was very scared, and I listened to a podcast. I decided I was not going to do it. And then the person said, we don't know what we're missing when we don't take risks. And the only thing we have to lose is really just finding out that it wasn't for us or that someone was going to say no. And I thought, if the only thing I have to lose is losing an election, then I'm not losing anything because I'm just right back where I started. But if I take this risk, I might be able to accomplish things I never thought possible and help people in a larger way than I was at the time. And I thought, why not? I'm going to go for it. And so I decided to run, and that was at the end of 2017. I ran in 2018, and I didn't know I was going to run against 4 other people, including a former council member. I ended up winning that seat and started on council in 2019, and here I am starting my 6th year. It's crazy.
Wow, what a wonderful story and journey. And so, well, once again, thank you for your service to humanity. Thank you for the work that you do for all of us, not just here in Lexington, but you are a true woman of distinction. And let us just remember that a woman of distinction embodies resilience and gracefully overcomes challenges to uplift those around them. And you certainly do that, Jennifer. So can you tell us about a significant challenge you faced in your career or personal life and how you overcame it?
I think that I've faced a lot of them just because I kind of have switched careers so many times. I always tease that I have many past lives. I feel like I've had the opportunity to live different lives. And I think that's great. At the same time, it's challenging. And I remember, I think one of the biggest challenges I faced in switching what I was doing was coming back to the States after living in Mexico. I felt like a dream that I had of living my life in Mexico. I thought I was going to have children there, live my life there. When that changed, it was hard for me to adjust. It was hard for me to adjust my expectations of what life was going to be like back in the States. I was overwhelmed by the prices of everything. I really went through reverse culture shock coming back. And I've kind of had that same sort of feeling every time I switch. When I quit ballet, I felt like I was losing my whole identity, that that's all I'd ever done my entire life, and then it switched and it was fine. And then, losing my identity of what I was doing in Mexico when I came back here and thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But then it worked out and I was able to start something new. I had to start it from scratch, and then after that, being on council, a huge switch too of what I was doing. And so I think those transitions have been challenging, but they've also been very rich and taught me how to adapt and be flexible along the way. My parents grew up in an era when a lot of times people stayed with one career their entire life at one institution, and that's not as common anymore. And I've kind of seen that as a advantage, just the opportunity to be able to do many different things.
Yeah, and so like Renee, when we think about as we develop this program, is just really pulling out the stories of strength and resilience from our nominees as well as the women of distinction that have emerged in this particular initiative. What are some of the obstacles that you've overcome, Renee, just in terms of being this strong woman that we see before us and that we're honored to be before?
I hear a lot of parallels in Jennifer's story with my story as well, especially with the arts and growing up in a musical family, not ballet, but, music. And also what really resonated with me is how you said this thing about, our parents worked for one organization, usually for 25 years. And that's really how success was defined back then. Mm-hmm. When we moved into times when I was starting my career where that became less possible because of corporate layoffs and all these things, that you have to learn to really flex and really go with the flow. And I know it sounds really cliche, but there's a lot to be said with that. And I think it's our ability to accept that and also be able to pivot into any thing that life gives to us at any given time, that's really an important quality of being a woman of distinction.
Yeah, and I mean, it's almost like you're saying what I'm actually thinking. That's work together, right? And it's about that pivoting and that mindset change in the moment. Mm-hmm. And I have found that that's been one of the biggest challenges for me as I have had upward trajectory. And it's because I've also claimed that as also a woman of distinction, right? And, and then we were talking earlier about just supporting one another in that womanness, mm-hmm. and making sure that every woman amongst us feels powerful, valued, included in the process, no matter where they are, if they're in the workplace, or if they're in the community, if they're on council, wherever they are in our families. It's just really important that we have that kind of support because we don't always have that level of support, do we?
No, we don't. And you did mention mindset. I really combine that with, I think a lot of people think that it's skill set that's really important, and it is. But if we have skill set without mindset, we don't really accomplish the things that we're here on this earth to do. So, Jennifer, let me ask you, I know you talked a lot in your intro about your current career path and your advocacy work, and you spoke about something specific with being someone who really encouraged you to run for council. Let me ask you, is there anything else that inspired you to pursue your career path into politics and also working as a community servant?
I really think that, and I realized when I was trying to decide after high school what direction to take, what was the next step. I realized that really more than ballet, I cared about and I wanted to help people. And I think it took me a while to figure that out, but along the way in all the things that I did since then, that was kind of a common stream. And I just thought maybe there was a way to make a difference in Lexington by being on council. And it was kind of, to me, an extension of the outreach work that I had been doing, serving the community. So several people encouraged me, explained to me that a lot of being on council is listening, it's learning, and really it's not only community service and public service, it's a lot of customer service. And I love that. It's my favorite thing. I love working with people, trying to help them solve their problems and get the solutions that they need to be able to have a better life. So it was really a great fit, more than I even thought that it would be, honestly.
So I wear many different hats, like many people do in the gig economy and beyond. I'm a fitness instructor, so I marvel at the fact that you actually owned a CrossFit gym, and I really think that that's special. And it almost seems like it's developed you intellectually as well as from a customer service perspective and an entrepreneurial perspective to do the work that you do. It just makes me think that success for every person is defined differently, right?
Very
And
much
so, how do you define success and how do you strive to achieve it in your endeavors?
I think a lot about success, and sometimes what the majority of our culture tells us success is rising to the top, being famous, having money. And for me, it's really more about having a whole life, a healthy life, a whole life, one that is service oriented, but that also includes taking care of yourself. And so I think success is being able maybe not to be the best in everything you do, maybe not always being at the top. Sometimes you might be, but being able to maintain your relationships with your family, your children, your friends, and then at work, doing well at work, being able to do things that are actually making a difference and take steps forward. But I don't see success as just one thing. Maybe if I get a higher office, then I will be successful. Or maybe if I make more money, I will be successful. But am I enjoying my life every day? Am I making a difference while doing that? And am I maintaining healthy relationships at the same time? If I can do that, then I'll be successful. And I have never been as happy as I have been the past few years. So I don't think I can always say that, but I am extremely happy right now. And I think that's success for me.
Well, I'm needing to hear this message today, so I'm very thankful that you've brought that as a reminder to really appreciate each day. And I just really like what you have to say about if I'm happy at the end of the day, then that's success. Because I think a lot of people look at it as financial or career-wise or how they're moving up in an organization. So I'm really thankful for that. And let me just say, too, that I'm just in admiration of you. And I read recently, I saw this on Facebook about community theater. And they had these celebrities around Lexington were going to be in. Has that already happened?
No, it is happening. I think it's the third weekend in April,
Okay.
the 17th. So I am participating in the Curtain Call with the Lexington Children's Theater. They put on, as a fundraiser every year, this really funny play with local celebrities. And I've wanted to do it for a while, so I was really excited when they approached me. Being able to use my love for the arts and help a good organization is really fun. So last year I did Dancing with the Stars for the Rotary Club, and I won the overall championship. And I had a blast. It's really an honor that I'm able to, do what I love and also for a good cause. So that's a fun little thing that I get to do.
Well, I think that's wonderful. And when I see my community representatives doing things like that, it just warms my heart. But it also makes me feel that you all really care and that you've taken something that you're very talented in and you're applying it to the work that you do every day. And those are absolutely some memorable achievements, I'm sure, that you've had. And the Dancing with the Stars would be it for me. I'd be like, I've achieved. I've arrived, right?
Well, people thought I was going on to the National Dancing with the Stars to compete. They didn't realize that it was just a local charity.
If you think about those types of achievements, what are some professional achievements or projects that you've worked on that you're extremely proud of?
I think one of the most impactful things I feel like I did was my work during COVID. During COVID, as the world shut down, it was kind of like they sent us home and said, okay, now we're moving into this phase that no one knew what was going to happen. At the time, I was serving and still am on the Board of Health for the health department. And I just thought to myself, if I was here in Lexington and I was not English proficient, what would I do? And I felt like there was this huge gap. in getting information out to people who were not proficient in English, especially in the Hispanic community. So I ate at the time, and I worked really hard to get that information out. We also worked with Radio Lex and others to come up with sheets of paper, and I went to the businesses and I'd pass them out, and I'd talk to business owners, and they really had no idea what was going on. We had food giveaways in my district. We worked with God's Pantry to do that, and every time all the 300 boxes would be gone, and we'd pass out important information at the same time. And I am grateful for the work that we did. We got more information working with Global Lex on our website. And I also worked with the governor's office because they were not getting any information out to the international community in other language. They don't have an international office or a globalization office. So I was able to work with somebody in their office to get a website going. So I think that was something that I'm really grateful I had the opportunity to do. It kept me busy, and I feel like it was helpful to that community. Language access is something that I care a lot about. Not only did I study Spanish and everything, but I am also a qualified medical interpreter and have done that on and off for the past 11 years, And so I see every day, when I'm doing that, people that really have a need.
Yeah, I mean, inclusivity is so important to each and every one of us in our humanity. And in so many cases, as a woman, that humanity can be challenged. And so as a woman in your field, what do you see as the most pressing issues or barriers for women's advancement, and how do you work to overcome them?
I've been thinking about this lately. I was recently at a women's conference, and they asked the same question. And for me, in my line of work, I really hadn't in my previous jobs kind of come up against a lot of sexism or borderline harassment. I really hadn't until I became a council member and worked in so many different circles with men. I've been in meetings that people wouldn't look me in the eye, where they look at everybody else, but they don't look at me, where they move around to leave me out of their circle. I've had that happen multiple times. And then I've had some just really inappropriate comments made to me that are not made to men. And so I think I wish that I had more mentorship or knowledge in how to address those things. When I'm in these professional settings where, I'm a council member, so sometimes you have a title, you think, well, that means that people are going to, treat me with some respect, but they still don't. And it definitely seems to be, a gender issue. And so I just wish I had someone in my life with some knowledge that says, this is how you should address this or that. Or if when you feel ignored in a meeting, this is how you can, move forward. And I've never had that. And actually at the conference that I was at, when we started talking about these same issues, and I brought up some of the comments that had been made to me, they said, well, I would just say thank you and move on. And I tend to kind of stick up for myself a little more than that. And I don't know what the right thing is. And I think women have felt like they just have to deal with it.
Does the council provide training for these kind of interactions when you're in the public?
No, we get some training on the front end that we have to go through about harassment and HR and what qualifies as harassment or whatever, but we don't really get specific training on, if this type of thing happens, then this is specifically how you would handle it.
Well, it's really interesting because in our organizations, whether it's Project Ricochet or WKY, when things come up and people feel harassed or they feel like that there is a lack of belonging, accessibility, or inclusivity, we address these things off the bat. Mm-hmm. And while you don't always have to be so aggressive and upfront, at the same time, we acknowledge and then we speak to all of the parties to ensure that they are whole again. And I really do think that that's important. And if we don't get anything out of this particular podcast, I just will tell anybody who has ever disrespected Councilmember Jennifer Reynolds, shame on you, okay? Because I am sitting here amongst royalty. we always want to make sure that we are respecting one another, regardless if we hold a position of power or if, you see someone who is ailing or unhomed, unhoused, whatever. Everyone deserves a level of respect and humanity.
The other thing is, sometimes those interactions aren't with people that work for the government. They're for people out in the community. And you're an elected official. You don't want to go ticking people off, but you're trying to also figure out that, that environment.
It's a balance of what I've called advocacy with inquiry and, to try to really get at the root of what's going on. But, to your point, Jennifer, I mean, this is something that puts women in a really difficult spot. And I'll give you an example. I remember one time there was a job that I had applied for and I finally got to the interview phase. And during the interview, this is a job that I really, really want to have. And one of the questions that comes out is, are you married? And how would your husband feel about you traveling in this position? And really, and knowing, and I'll just for perspective, this was many years ago, but however, it was still inappropriate during that time in history. But it's such a fine line where you're in this and you're like, okay, I'm talking to somebody who's interviewing me that's probably not going to be, my manager. However, how do I answer this question? Because I really want the job. But then you're going do I really want to work here if this is the mindset? And it just really, honestly, it's just unfair at times that it puts the responsibility back on, the woman to really figure out how to manage all of this. So sometimes, like I said, I've said this many times, we've come a long way, but I feel we have a long way to go.
Because a man's not getting asked that in an interview.
Exactly. Or even in the questions that you get as being a council member. So you've talked about a lot of these barriers and also how you define success. And I imagine that there have been some women of distinction in your life along the way. And maybe you could share some of those women with us and the impact that they've had on your career trajectory, but also how you view life and success in general.
There's been a lot of women who have really poured into me and really given me so much over the years. My mom, as I mentioned, was my teacher my whole life.
One of those.
And she's still one of my closest friends and supports me to this day. Since my son was born, she has been watching him when I work and just giving of herself. And my parents both were super supportive my whole life. You want to be a ballet dancer? We're going to make it happen. You want to do this? We're going to be there to support you. And I'm very grateful that I do have both of them. So I have to thank them for all that they've given me and just always taught me that I could do whatever I wanted, that, it wasn't their decision. It was always my decision as to what path I was taking. And then along the way, I had several teachers, whether that be in church or in ballet, that were very encouraging. But one of them is my dear friend, and she's the one that runs the ballet school that I mentioned. And she really just always has encouraged me over the years that I can do big things and that I'm capable, that she thinks that I'm a person that's worth investing in. And I've always really appreciated that. And then later, I had a mentor in my faith community. For a while, we would meet for mint tea every week and talk about life. And she has always just been an inspiration to me. And she ended up encouraging me to run for office and then supporting me through that whole process over the years. And I really admire her. She has 4 children. She does so many different things. She recently moved away, which is very sad to me, but we still keep in touch. I am grateful for all the time and all the hours of her talking to me about every single thing on the campaign trail to being in office. I'm grateful for her leadership.
Well, absolutely. And so you talked about how your mentor was so many to so many. Certainly, even in this podcast, you've talked about all the different responsibilities and hats that you wear. So how do you balance your professional commitments with your personal life and even other interests that you may have, including those of professional or even educational development?
I think that In our lives, we, especially as women, kind of like what you were saying about the questions with, is your family going to be okay with this? Are you able to travel? I've always held this idea that we have to find a balance. But recently, I heard a psychologist say that a balance is impossible. We cannot find a balance. We can have several things that we care about a lot. And from time to time, one comes up a little higher and we put more importance on it. And one comes up, another one might come up a little higher in another time. But we can't keep it all level all the time. And that was a really good image for me and helping me understand my own life. I feel like currently I'm in a good place of being able to spend time with my family, with my boyfriend, with my son, and spend a lot of time on my professional work. I try to dance when I have time off. I do Latin dancing and ballroom dancing now. I try to travel. That's my biggest love. I try to do fun things with my son. I always feel a little bit like I'm never doing enough. And I think we all feel that way from time to time. So sometimes in my professional world, especially being on council, it is constant. You feel that you could literally be working 24/7 and never be doing enough. And there's always more things, and you can always think of more things to do. And people are calling you, constantly asking you to do things. And so it's challenging sometimes to be able to know when to turn it off, when to put the work aside, knowing it's important work, but that you can't be on all the time. So I think I found a good balance right now, but I want to shift my balance a little bit. I have some goals for the next year, and I'm hoping that will go well.
My best response to this, Dr. Elamine, because I can tell the listeners that I am definitely the oldest person in this room right now. But from perspective, this has gone such full circle to me because, again, starting my career, which was in the 90s, there was this big belief out there, that women could have it all. We could have all these children and we could also work a full-time job and, be happy. And I think my best answer to that for young female professionals now is that I do believe you can have it all, but not perhaps at the same time. Mm-hmm. So let's change the way that we look at work-life balance. And it's interesting because Dr. Elamine can tell you, too, that every woman of distinction that we've asked this question to has answered in a very similar fashion. So, I think this is a wonderful discussion, and it's also one that's not played out as much as it should because of the past paradigms of, women can do it all, we can have it all, and there's all this expectations. Mm-hmm. So going along those lines, in what ways do you feel that the work that you do, even if it's in your personal work or your personal life, in your role as council member, how do you feel that you support other women of distinction in your pursuits?
We work with a lot of different employees in local government, and I think being able to support them in what they're doing, no matter what their role is, and helping women understand, whether it's in local government or in the community, that they're valued, that they can be in leadership roles, and that their opinion matters. It doesn't matter if you're a council member. You don't have to be a council member to be valuable or successful or have just as important a role in the community. So I think that along the way, that's what I try to do, is encourage other women and help them see that they're important too. And sometimes we come along people that, want to run for office, or I could think of some younger women I've worked with lately that have very big dreams, and just letting them know that there really is no dream that's too big, and that they can go for whatever it is, and that it's worth trying. It's worth shooting for the stars.
Absolutely. There's that saying that it takes a village to raise a child, but I think that it takes a village to raise a woman of distinction. And even as I was listening to you, and I'm reflecting on this concept of a woman of distinction. Every woman is not a woman of distinction, is what is like landing for me. Mm-hmm. And, but part of that is the mentorship, being mentored, being a good mentee, being a good listener, being supportive of others, having the resilience that comes from life's lessons, or even owning a CrossFit, being a ballet dancer. I too used to be a ballet dancer at the tender age of 5. That is to attain that goal. So the thing is that every woman cannot be and is not. They could be a woman of distinction if they put in the hard work and if they had the kind of community that we have. Okay. And so, I just think that is really important to just point out that, it takes work to be excellent. It takes intention. But what advice would you give to other women aspiring to make a difference in their respective fields or in the community?
I think, first of all, to get their feet wet and learn more about that field. And then maybe if you know a woman that is working in that field, connecting with her. But most of all, I think that the most important thing is what I mentioned earlier, and that is being willing to take a risk. Take a risk on yourself. Take a risk on doing something that is hard, doing something that is challenging, doing something that you've never done before, that you should go ahead and try, because the worst thing that could happen is we could fail. And then we reevaluate and we pivot and we go a different direction. And I'm just grateful that I had people encouraging me. I really think running for office is extremely scary. You're putting yourself out there. You have people voting for you. So that's a big responsibility and very humbling. And you could have people not vote for you and you could lose. You could win and you could have no idea what you're doing, or you could hate what you're doing. And I am just really fortunate that didn't happen in my case, but I'm really glad that I took that risk. And any woman, whatever direction you're going, not just running for office, but what that scary thing that's in front of you, don't be afraid to go for it.
Absolutely. And you've already mentioned that you were the first of a couple of things, such as the CrossFit owner in Mexico. What are some of the other firsts that you have accomplished in your life?
I was one of the youngest council members at the time when I got elected. I guess I was the first council member that ever did anything in Spanish. I'm not Hispanic. I did make a commitment when I ran for office to do all of my information, my social media, and everything in my newsletter in Spanish and English. So I was the first to do anything like that. No one else is doing that still at the time. I was also one of the first to start pressing on the issue of language access, and I was able actually to, because of my initiative, get the whole website for the city's website to have language options. So now it can be changed into many different languages. I've tackled some controversial things throughout my career on council, and including gun violence. And I guess that's one thing I'm not scared of, is to just speak up on what I believe on. I was the first to say that we need a ceasefire in Gaza. So I'm not scared to stand up for what I believe. That's kind of my short list.
Standing up and when it's the right thing to do.
Well, this has been just a fascinating discussion, and I'm just so happy that you've taken your time away from being council member for a short period to really talk to women that are in the community, but also the community members in general. And I'm just really inspired by your story. How do you envision using your platform in the future to create positive change for women and girls? Because we have a next generation coming, right? So how do you plan on doing that in the future?
Well, first of all, I feel so honored and humbled once again to be here, because I'm just a very, very small drop in a big ocean of amazing, distinguished women. So I don't see myself as making a huge splash, but little splashes along the way. And I really hope that what I do on council encourages other women not only to run for office, but to be bold in their stances, that if they believe in something, to take a stance, to not be scared because it's not popular, because people might not vote for them, because others are looking down on them, but that along the way, I think we're asked to make hard decisions. And sometimes it means we'll be rewarded for them, and sometimes that it won't. But I hope that I'll be able to work with young women and encourage them to take those hard stances and move forward in making a difference in their community. Because at the end of the day, if what we're doing is not helping others and making a difference, then I feel like it's in vain. And that's what I felt about ballet. I adored ballet, but I just knew that staring at myself in a mirror in a leotard and tights was not making a difference in this world and was actually ruining my mental health. So I hope that other women will take that step, get out of that leotard and tights, stop staring at themselves in the mirror, and go forward.
We've got our marching orders, right? Be nice to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Love yourself. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
It was an honor.
So you have just heard from Councilmember Jennifer Reynolds. We are so honored. We are so thankful for the knowledge that she has shared with us today. Thank you so much for listening to The Ricochet Effect. Well, we've come to the close of another amazing podcast. I'd like to thank our listeners. I'd like to thank our guest. And as we say here at WUKY, we can't do it without our community. Our programming is distinctive because it provides development opportunities for community and economic empowerment.
It's the Ricochet Effect. Ricochet Effect. It's the Ricochet Effect. Ricochet Effect. Ricochet.